Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, thank you so much for coming in today to the Future Food Summit 7th edition. And before I start and give you a briefing on where the food cluster is going, I'd like to start with a story, personal one. 5 years ago, coming in the Ministry of Economy back then, looking at the economy as it is hitting down COVID-19 back in the trenches of what's been then a devastating economy globally, crumbling down. When I thought, I took back seat to think about what should I add to the economy. 50 years of an economy that has been built on infrastructure, transportation, logistics, aviation, retail, hospitality, tourism, oil and gas, of course, construction, real estate. But what could be added? That back seat came back with a thought. When we looked at sectors back then, from infrastructure to logistics to aviation, what really brings them together? So I went to the professor, Michael Porter. I think everybody knows him. He had the cluster economy model. And what are the clusters? Clusters are sectors based, where you bring 4 to 5 sectors. So those who we see here, from logistics, from cold storage, from aviation, from food processing, from farmers, they're all sector based. But what brings you together is a cluster. So Michael Porter did 70 plus clusters, well known. And he said 50 of these 70 are tradable clusters, and 20 are non-tradable. What are the non-tradable ones? Hotels, education, healthcare. You cannot trade healthcare, you cannot trade education. Those are clusters within the country. But there are 50 of them, which is tradable clusters, such as food and food processing. And when we looked at the UAE, I said, all right, this is great. Let's take another step back and say, what clusters do we actually create? So we analyzed the UAE cluster in general in the UAE. And we have found that today we stand about 30 to 40 clusters already based in the last 50 years. And they said, all right, let's have a matrix that will actually define which cluster that the Ministry of Economy and Tourism should focus on. 5 came out. And number 1 was the food cluster. Food and food processing, and they are 2 different things. And that's when we started. Last week, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum has approved through the cabinet the UAE cluster strategy as a policy, as a national policy, and food cluster as one of them. But with Saleh Luta, 2 years ago, I came to him attending this forum, this summit, and said, why don't we start the UAE food cluster? He accepted my crazy idea. We started the UAE food cluster then. He's the chairman of the UAE food cluster, and we took it on. Today, when the cabinet approved the policy, the UAE food cluster is established. I'm so happy to see the numbers of partners, sponsors growing year on year. I was here last year and I saw the names, and today I see even bigger. Thank you all for joining us on the UAE food cluster. It's a bottom-up approach. We made more than 60 workshops. Bottom-up approach, working with each and every one of you. A momentum movement that really brought the food cluster to where we are today. And today, the most important now is to set these KPIs, these targets. We want to create more than 20,000 jobs in the next 6 years. We want to increase 10 billion dirhams into our GDP from the clusters. And we want to create a more trading from 25 billion to 45 billion in the next couple of years. These are the targets that the cluster needs to work and move forward. Now, Saleh Luta is the chairman of the UAE Food Cluster, and there's members of the partners into it. And the Ministry of Economy and Tourism is your bench where we can work together, we can think, but I'm so proud to see the private sector coming in and really taking this forward. It's an astonishing moment to stand here in front of you, to really thank you all for coming in, supporting this vision, the country's vision to really have a set alignment to reduce our import from 90% probably down to somewhere around 60% to be more reasonable. But this is an opportunity for all of us to really make a change, and I think this is a momentous day. We will see some signing, and the collaboration and the innovation that we will see today is a moment to start forward as well, implementing the strategy. Thank you very much.